It's Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. Tsunami watches turn to warnings in the Pacific, a personnel win and loss for the Trump administration, and let's get a vibe check on the economy next on the AM Update. The sound of a tsunami warning siren going off on the islands of Hawaii, and some of those watches across the Pacific, even on America's Pacific coast, the West Coast, those watches turn to advisories and later on warnings. Japan's meteorological agency issued a tsunami alert for Japan's Pacific coast, upgrading an earlier advisory stemming from the powerful magnitude 8.8 quake that hit Wednesday morning near Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. The agency issued an advisory for a tsunami of up to 3 yards across the Pacific coast of Japan. Obviously, Hawaii and the west coast of the United States are on high alert as well. Just to put this earthquake into perspective, 8.8, that's the magnitude. It was originally reported as an 8.7 on the Richter scale, later upgraded to an 8.8. That is the largest earthquake on this planet since the 2011 Japanese Tohoku earthquake, and this would be the sixth largest quake ever recorded on the planet. So again, all of these advisories, watches, turning into warnings across the West Coast. Please keep those in the impacted area in your prayers. The horrific mass shooting at a Midtown office building in New York City on Monday was the deadliest attack in the Big Apple in 25 years. Shane Tamura gunned down 4 innocent people, including a New York Police Department cop and a business executive, before turning the gun on himself late Monday. Last time 5 people were killed in a Big Apple shooting was in 2000 when robbers shot 7 employees at a Wendy's in Queens. In that case, all 5 dead were innocent victims, unlike Monday when the killer was among the fatalities. Now, New York City Mayor Eric Adams came out yesterday morning and said that this individual, the gunman, was actually trying to target the National Football League corporate headquarters in that building. He took the wrong elevator. Well, the Senate confirmed Trump's nominee, Emil Bove, as a federal judge on Tuesday, handing what has turned into, to some people, a controversial leader at the Department of Justice in a lifetime role on a powerful appellate court. Bove was narrowly confirmed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 3rd District in a 50-49 vote. With no support from Democrats, his confirmation followed a contentious weeks-long vetting process that included 3 whistleblower complaints and impassioned outside figures voicing both support and opposition to his nomination. Trust me, anybody who you actually trust, who is actually MAGA, who's actually conservative and believes in the Constitution, loves this guy. Those who are in the FedSoc wing of the, let's just call it, not left-wing movement of this country, hate this guy, which means he's probably pretty good. President Trump sat down with Miranda Devine at the New York Post to discuss various matters, including what he believes was at the center of the deep state plot to unstabilize his first administration through the Russiagate hoax.
Yeah. So, we had Hillary Clinton down to whatever we wanted to do with her, and I felt it was inappropriate. She's the wife of a president. She was a Secretary of State. And we could have done a very big number. Yeah. And I said, we don't want to be doing that. Let's, put it into the country and not the concept of putting her in jail, indicting her, all the things that you have to do. It's tough stuff. And I said, we don't want to do that. In fact, you remember I made speeches when I mentioned her name. They started lock her up. Yeah. And I said, no, this is after we won. We just won. And I said,
you wanted the country
we have to
heal.
Get back to, we want to heal. And yet they did it to me. Yeah. So I feel differently. I mean, I'm a human being. I have my feelings too. And so I feel differently about it. Obama, what he did was terrible. What Brennan did and Clapper and Comey and all these lightweights, they're stupid people actually. But what they did, and so unnecessary. And they made it really hard. But ultimately, I don't know, they toughen you up. You either learn that you can do that. How many people could handle that?
So during his first administration, I thought the lack of actually locking her up when it comes to Hillary Clinton was, I don't want to call it a backstab, but it was a disappointment, to say the least. Now, 8-9 years later, Trump looks like the big man in the room. Look Look, I tried to treat her with dignity and respect as the wife of a former president and former Secretary of State. I tried to treat her as I would like to be treated, and they still did me dirty anyway. He gets to be the big man in the room with stuff like this. So, again, it is what it is. It's just looking back, I mean, tiptoeing through the raindrops when it comes to President Trump and his political journey just doesn't even begin to describe it. Well, I told you about a personnel win for President Trump with the confirmation of Emil Bove to a Court of Appeals. Well, this is definitely a personnel loss. According to multiple reports, Dr. Vinay Prasad, who presided over one of the chief vaccine advisory committees at the Food and Drug Administration, after less than 3 months on the job, he is now gone. Quote from a story, or at least a statement from the Food and Drug Administration, quote, Dr. Prasad did not want to be a distraction to the great work of the FDA and the Trump administration and has decided to return to California and spend more time with his family. We thank him for his service and the many important reforms he was able to achieve in his time at the FDA. Dr. Vinay Prasad had come under fire from, don't say it's a Big Pharma, but it definitely is. He had come under fire from Big Pharma for basically not having one of them tattoos a la Idiocracy. He challenged the norms that Big Pharma is accustomed to when it comes to dealing with the FDA, and so there were a lot of attacks made up against him, and now he's tucking tail and running after fewer than 3 months on the job. Well, I told you earlier this week about President Trump's musings about potentially cutting Americans of rebate checks from all of those tariff revenues. Well, Senator Josh Hawley has introduced legislation to provide $600 tariff rebates to almost all Americans and to their dependent children, a proposal that would give a family of four $2,400. Hawley said in a statement, quote, Americans deserve a tax rebate after 4 years of Biden policies that have devastated families. And like President Trump proposed, my legislation would allow hardworking Americans to benefit from the wealth that Trump tariffs are returning to this country. The legislation would be modeled on the direct payments Congress authorized in the 2020 CARES Act, which provided $1,200 direct payments to adults and $500 direct payments to children. So maybe that proposal, fleeting though it was, maybe it actually has some legs after all. Quickly before the break, here is Senator Chuck Schumer yelling about immigration.
Not going to let them revert to Jim Crow. And if you don't think they want to revert to Jim Crow, just look what they did in the SAVE Act, which went back to took Jim Crow for the whole nation. By so making it hard, they said you need ID, and they made it so hard to show ID that probably half the people in America couldn't vote.
There is Senator Chuck Schumer yelling and moaning about how it's unfair for illegals to have an ID to vote. I mean, make that sentence make sense. Anyway, he was yelling there. You heard that. Here he is later on in the day.
Stop yelling. Yes.
Stop yelling. Stop yelling. The old man yelled. Term limits now. When we come back, let's get a vibe check on how you, well, at least me, for this episode, we're feeling about the economy and economic prospects. Also, you'll never guess who Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested in Maine. That's coming up next.
You've been described as a global macro veteran and you run a hedge fund. In this moment, where would you put your money if you were still running one?
United States of America.
There is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent being asked by a foreign reporter, hey, you've run hedge funds before. You've been described as a global macro veteran. Where would you put your money if you were still running a hedge fund? And right on the money, without skipping a beat, Secretary Bessent said the United States of America is where I'd be putting my money. He's very bullish on the United States of America. He has to be. He works in the Trump administration. I wanted to know what you think. Are you bullish on the American economy? I asked you that for our poll of the week. You can go vote in that. Look for the pinned post over on my X page at RealAMUpdate. I'll have more to say about this in air analysis, but first, you'll never guess who Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested in Maine. Here's a report from a local TV station.
A police officer there has been arrested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Unit in Boston says John Luke Evans was picked up in Biddeford after he illegally tried to buy a gun in Maine. ICE says Evans is from Jamaica and that he came here legally in 2023 but overstayed his visa. During the arrest, they say he told ICE agents he was trying to buy the gun to use as part of his employment as a police officer. You can see Evans here in a post from the Old Orchard Beach Police Department back in June as they welcomed 6 new reserve officers, saying the group had recently graduated from the Maine Criminal Justice Academy's Law Enforcement Pre-Service Program.
That is a report from News Center Maine, the NBC affiliate in that area of the country. How does that even happen? I pondered aloud earlier this week that if you've got any municipality, any county-level government, as they have in the United Kingdom right now, who's hiring a Sharia law administrator, you probably don't have much of a country. A dude from Jamaica came to the United States, to Maine, legally overstayed his visa, and was promptly hired as a police officer. No, we're not playing Mad Libs here. That's a real story. And now here's this. America's Governor Ron DeSantis goes off on companies like Microsoft firing Americans only to apply for more H-1B visas.
But there's also some people, a lot of these Republicans that say, oh, you can have 1 million people plowing as long as it's legal. That's good. Is that really good? Doesn't it depend on why they're coming in? Like, for example, you have some of these tech companies. They're laying off all these American workers, and then they're importing H-1B visa people to work for cheaper. I think that's a total scam. I don't think that that's good. Yes, it is legal the way they're doing it. I acknowledge that. They're using something that's on the books. But is that good policy for us as a country to have Americans put out of work and then to bring in H-1B visa, and then they do chain migration from the H-1B. So the H-1B is bringing in other folks, and it's almost like indentured servitude because you can't leave the company. And so these companies love it because they save a lot of money off of it, but that's not putting the American people first. And so there's a whole host of, I think, really important issues. And the way I view it is, we're a country with borders and sovereignty. And if you don't have that, then you don't ultimately have a country. We, the American people, decide who comes and who doesn't. And you can do that however you want. American people have enacted through their representatives this H-1B. We're free to, get that to be taken away. Nothing's wedded here, but that's what it's all about. And what you're seeing in Florida, we're the only state that has stepped up to lead to enhance these efforts for immigration enforcement and to increase the. And the thing is, you've had millions and millions and millions, maybe 10 million under Biden, maybe more, but certainly at least 7 or 8 million come in illegally and from all over the world, not just from Mexico or Central America. You had people coming from China. You had people coming from Iran. You had people coming from Russia. You had people coming from all these places. And it's like, okay, are all those folks just here because they want to have a picnic? Maybe a lot of them, I don't know, but I know not all of them, right? I know that when you have that many millions of people, you definitely have folks who are going to cause, who are here to cause a lot of problems. And I think that that's been a soft underbelly of this country to have that border the way it was under Biden. So we're really leaning in. We're the only state that requires cooperation with DHS, with all our state and local law enforcement agencies. Like, look, in Florida, I'm going to order the state agencies to do it, right? I mean, that's fine. But, there's a lot of local police department, sheriff's departments. They'd rather not be involved in. I get it. But we're either going to solve this problem now or we're never going to solve it. So we've been leaning in on this in a really big way. I know the president and some of his key people in this space have called on other states to do similar to Florida. And I'd like to see that. I think that would really make a difference. Just getting through all the people that have already been ordered to be removed. That's not an easy thing to do. That's a lot of logistics. You got to fly and do this and do that. Fortunately, Alligator Alcatraz, you literally just drive them 2,000 feet and there's a massive runway right there. So it's very easy. It's a one-stop shop to be able to do this and to get it done.
It's just, he makes it sound so easy all the time. It's like, look at us in Florida. We got some legislation. through that requires cooperation with DHS when it comes to deportations. Also, we built a large detention facility that's 2,000 feet away from a runway where we can fly all of these illegals, deport all of these illegals out of there. Just that easy. Just snapped my fingers, basically, and made it happen. As Ron DeSantis, Florida governor, outlining the scam that H-1B visas are. And that's something that's not talked about. You heard him talk about that there. The chain migration that every single H-1B visa sets off. Because if you're here legally, wink, wink, on an H-1B visa, then you can allow your family to come, or maybe your wife, or things like that. And then once you're here, it's really hard to say goodbye and deport. That's the game. That's the scam. And he's hitting the nail right on the head. When it comes to anytime you hear a politician, especially Republicans like to say this: we need less illegal immigration and more legal immigration. No, we need less immigration, period, legal or illegal. If you're still legally importing just hundreds of thousands of people illegally with the express purpose, again, it is the express, let's just not make any bones about it, with the express purpose of basically undermining the American worker and the wage that they can command, that's just a scam. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Employers posted 7.4 million job vacancies last month, a sign that American job markets continue to cool. Labor Department reported Tuesday that job openings in June were down from 7.7 million in May and were about what forecasters had expected. The job openings and labor turnover survey showed that layoffs were little changed in June, but that the number of people quitting their jobs, a sign of confidence in their prospects elsewhere, dropped last month to the lowest level since December. Hiring also fell from May. You can see that one of two ways. Fewer job vacancies means that more people are finding work, or that fewer people are leaving their jobs to find better prospects. So there's two different ways that you can view that. I just wanted to get a vibe check on what my audience kind of thinks of the economy and their prospects right now without getting super personal. That's what I asked you this week on the poll of the week, which you can vote in over at Real AM Update on X. I just asked you on the economy, are you very pessimistic, optimistic, or very optimistic? We'll get into those results tomorrow on the program. But I just wanted to express something. I would only be optimistic personally. Now, this is just personally, so anecdotally, and if I'm doing, worse economically, but it means the rest of the country is doing better, or while the rest of the country is doing better, then that's okay. I want the entire country to do well. But I tried to ask this question in a way that I would get people's personal response without asking the question super personally. Because there's only one thing that makes me optimistic, and that is what transpired with taxes in the big, beautiful bill. Because for the last several years, and this is an indication, I'm compensated in my day job very, very well, especially considering people in commiserate positions, how they are compensated, and I know that. I'm compensated very, very well. But for whatever reason, we do pretty well with budgeting. We do pretty well with not spending too much, living within our means. Nevertheless, for the last, basically since Bella and I have been married, because of various side projects that I have, try to put away money for that. Nevertheless, every single year we get absolutely pilloried during tax season. And now we're back on one income, which I'm happy, and that's a blessing to be able to do that. But we're still, from this year, we are not recovered from what Uncle Sam, the number that he did on us this year. We're still not recovered. We're coming into August now, and we're still trying to dig out from that tax bill. So for the taxes alone, that's the only thing that's making me optimistic thus far. And again, that's just my situation. And this is, again, I'm trying to ask a personal question in an impersonal way. Because adding up what it's going to look like next year based on some of these new guidelines and the tools that I've been able to find so far, there's not too many of them that understand the new tax code that'll come in next year. It's looking a lot rosier for us, and it won't be a time of weeping and gnashing of teeth next year. but rather I think it's going to be a time where we're going to be breathing a sigh of relief, which I haven't experienced during tax season in the better part of a decade. So that is the genesis for this week's poll of the week. Go vote in it over at Real AM. Update on X. Look for the pinned post. That's going to do it for Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.